All right. Hello, everyone. It's Craig Fisher. We are here again, live to entertain you, educate you, and inspire you. I have with me my wonderful co host today, Annie Hammer. She's the SVP of Retail, Hospitality, and Consumer for AMS, which is one of my favorite RPO companies, and a generous sponsor of the TalentNet Live Conference. And you can see Annie and I in person a week from Friday in Austin at the TalentNet Live Conference at 920 Congress all day that Friday. And we're going to have a lot of fun. Very excited. Annie, how are you?
I'm good, Greg. Thanks for having me. I'm actually really looking forward to being down in Austin at your event next week. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, I'm in Northwest Ohio, where the sun is shining and the snow is nearly melted, which is exciting. But more excited to be coming down to Texas and seeing a bit more warm weather.
Yeah, it should be nice. It's usually a pretty beautiful weather in Austin at this time. And we do some fun things. We'll have a little happy hour on the evening before. We'll have a day of learning and networking on Friday, and then we'll have a little after party. And some people will stick around through the weekend to do some South by Southwest events, which is pretty cool. And yeah, we're gonna talk shop. We're gonna talk talent, just
Should
like
be
we're
a good
about to do
time.
now. That's right. Andre Boulay, can't wait for TalentNet.
Mm,
Always, he says,
Great
one of
to
the best
see you,
conferences
Andre.
in talent acquisition. Yes, indeed.
Looking forward to it.
Can't disagree. All right. So today we're talking about practical AI in hiring, small steps, big impact. And, this is really about adoption is happening. We're starting to see the reality that we're not getting away from AI anytime soon in the hiring space. It is consuming most of our conversations and a lot of our
Mhm.
time. And there's so many options now for employers to use AI in just about every facet of what we do, all the tools, but it can be overwhelming, if you ask me. So, Annie, for teams who do feel a little overwhelmed, what's a common misconception about AI and TA that you'd like to clear up?
Yeah. So I think what I'd first say is don't be overwhelmed or scared. I know it can be daunting,
Mhm.
but don't feel that way, even though I'm sure many of you do. And I think there's probably, if I think about it, there's probably two misconceptions I would say that, want to maybe clear up or talk a little bit about. I'd say first, a common misconception, especially at highly regulated companies such as, banks, federal contractors, and hospitality and consumer is that it'll be too hard or it'll take too long to get approval. And if you yourself are maybe not fully comfortable with AI, maybe you're starting to use Copilot or you're starting to use ChatGPT in your day-to-day work, but you're not fully comfortable with it, you may be nervous about getting exposed or not having all the right answers when your internal colleagues are asking you about how you're going to be using AI within recruitment. And I'd say that misconception is that it's going to be too hard. But what I would say is first, go and look at what's being done in your consumer side or the front areas of your business. If you're a retailer or a hospital group or a pharma organization, you probably already have AI being used for customer support, for marketing, for sales, operations. There are likely areas that it is being used, and go find out, where did they start? Who did they work with in your organization? Who was your compliance lead? Who was their IT or the legal team members that maybe worked with them on it? Then think about, what are those use cases that you might want to bring in? And I think we're going to talk about some of those today. So hopefully
Mhm.
that will inspire you to think about use cases that maybe you haven't thought about, or you have, but you're not sure where to start. And what I would do is take some of those use cases that you think are going to be useful for your own business, or your own organization, and take them to those internal contacts in your legal team, in your compliance team, your data privacy team, your IT team, et cetera, and say, I'm considering these. Where do you recommend I start? And when I say that, because it's all about bringing them on the journey and getting others in your organization to help you do that. And so I think sometimes that can be daunting, or oh, I'm never going to get this through because we're highly regulated, or my team isn't going to necessarily support that. But go talk to those partners. Then I would also say is go talk to your technology or your talent acquisition services partner and find out how some of their clients have tackled getting AI solutions through their team. So, technology companies will typically have subject matter experts in their organizations that have helped companies through their use cases. I know, Greg, you worked with a number of tech companies that have individuals in their own teams, as do we, where they can help those companies understand what are the use cases, how to get it approved, et cetera. So don't try to do it alone with just by yourself. And then pick one place to start. We're going to talk about a couple places to start here, I think, today, but pick one or two places to start versus saying, oh, I've got these 20 things I want to use it for and trying to tackle all 20. So that's sort of probably my first misconception. And then my second one is a little bit more shorter and simpler, but the second one is I think AI isn't a tool or a solution on its own. And I know that might sound silly, but I wouldn't be out going to look to say, I'm going to buy AI. I would be thinking about what are your use cases? What do you need to solve for? What outcomes do you want to achieve? And then first start and say, what tools do I already have on the shelf that might already have the capabilities that I haven't switched on or I'm not using?
Mhm.
And then you can still go out and search and look for tools, but you're not out there to buy AI maybe as a tool. Instead, you're looking to support a certain outcome or a certain process or use case.
Yep. Andre says we partner with companies like SoundHound, who are a great resource for paths they go through to get AI into large enterprise companies. I'd agree with that. Um, I did a project with the world's largest bank, and they asked us to help fix 13,000 job descriptions. Right.
How many jobs do they have of those job descriptions in
Yeah, a lot. Right. And these are just the tech jobs.
it?
And so, that Oracle Recruiting Cloud is what they use. And it shows a little blurb on the careers page of each job. So they can't all be the same. There
Yeah.
has to be, right? They have to look different. And so I built a custom GPT because I wasn't inside the organization. I wasn't accessing data. Um, I was getting a file sent to me of job descriptions, and that's it. And so our job is creative writing and formatting, and then understanding. We built a universe of bias terms that they adopted, and this is how we eventually got their team the ability to use some AI to help with this process as well, by saying our mission is to remove bias from all of your job
Mhm.
descriptions, right? And legal loves that
Yeah.
approach. And so that worked out pretty good.
I think that's a great example of a really practical use and a great place to start too, is starting with something that it's going to have a positive impact in terms of removing some of that bias, but it's also not talking about decision making or anything like that. It's simply making the candidate experience better, getting the right people in, but also expanding the pool of potential talent that you're um, reaching.
Yeah, it's low risk, right? And so where you get into higher risk is when you're doing matching and
Yeah.
suggesting, right? And so then you have to be able to audit yourself a little bit and say, all right, are we doing anything that is, biasing the process?
Mhm.
And now we're in a weird situation where candidates' resumes are starting to be AI enhanced
Yeah.
to the point that they're surpassing the capabilities of the legacy job descriptions to be matched with them, right? So
Mhm.
now not only do you have to beware of bias in matching, but you also have to ensure that your jobs are AI ready to even be matched,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
avoiding risk there as well. There's a new tool, and there's new tools coming out all the time, but there's a new tool from Google called Career Dreamer. Uh,
Mhm.
and it's another one of these tools to help enhance your your resume and your profile and your own experience to better attack the perceived ATS
Yeah.
right bias that is ruling you out in the first place. Now, I got a lot of stuff to say about that, but we'll talk about that later. So you work with a lot of companies who are implementing AI in their hiring process or trying to. What are some of the most practical applications you've seen?
Yeah, I'd say there's quite a few applications that we're seeing or helping clients with. If I think about our kind of the long list, there's 60 plus at the moment across our clients. But I think about um, across all those clients, what are the top three that are most common? And I would boil it down to first, it'll just probably naturally start with from a process perspective and where it happens in recruiting. The first is probably very similar to what you were sharing about the bank that you helped, but maybe broadening beyond the job postings is the written content. So
Mm-hmm.
whether that's job postings, emails, even the text messages that might be used for early stage candidate engagement and attraction in mails. So I'd kind of class all of that into optimizing outbound outreach and content, and whether that's net new passive candidates or that's rediscovery of individuals that you already know that are in your systems, but the actual messages or the content that you're going out to them with or posting, leveraging that, leveraging AI to be able to help optimize the written kind of content is probably the first use case. And it's quite a basic use case. You don't even necessarily, to your point, need a platform to do it. There's platforms that do it, but or that are built into the tools. You actually can use, whatever your organization, if you have Copilot or something, you can actually use that to help you with that if you don't have a TA tech specific tool. So I'd say that's the first one, which is really about kind of the marketing, the outbound, the contact points you might have with candidates where they're going to be reading information. The second application that we're seeing quite a bit of is the application process, including the initial screening. So using conversational AI, and I'm not talking about, a Q&A chat bot per se, but more so beyond that, where you're actually coming into a process and a candidate is applying for a job and using conversational AI to help with that. So we're seeing our clients that are using that type of approach, seeing the drop off and apply being reduced because the friction's being reduced. So you're seeing really a reduction of 40 to 75% in what they were seeing, and dropouts is now being increased. And they're also able to screen and ask them those additional questions that feel a little bit more conversational than your fill out this long form. So it's probably the second kind of practical AI application we're seeing. And the third is interview scheduling. So we're seeing that driving efficiencies of anywhere from kind of 35 to upwards 80+% efficiencies being gained through using AI within scheduling. We actually even have clients that, my passion or my focus is largely our frontline and our volume hiring organizations, but we're seeing some of our clients that are professional hires, quite complex interview scheduling panels and such, where 86% of their interviews aren't needing human intervention for the manager and the candidate. And so they're able to do kind of more complex, whether it's round robin or panel interviews, through AI technology or AI, which is incredible. You expect that type of efficiency gain when you're talking about one-to-one simple scheduling. But now being able to use AI-based scheduling and having those results in complex interview requirements, I think is quite staggering and really great.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with that. And we're starting to see a rise of organizations using AI to combat fraud, right? And flagging duplicate information and scanning for dubious credentials and things like that.
Yeah.
And so the risk backlash is kind of starting to go back towards the candidates, which is wild to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I agree.
Yeah. So, okay. For organizations that are just starting to explore AI, do you recommend, where do you recommend that they begin? Like, what's a small step? You said find out what your consumer teams are doing.
Mhm.
Is that the first place to start?
Yeah, I would start with your consumer teams. And, I think about 10 years ago, we were talking a lot about sort of consumers as candidates. And I think to some degree that's still, I think we moved away from that for a while, but maybe we should be back to thinking about that again
Mhm.
but I think you can view it in a different way now. So looking at AI for things like LinkedIn and social posts, I'd be remiss if I say when I'm putting stuff on LinkedIn, I'm quickly just saying, hey, I need to write a quick summary of this article. Can you write the summary in 3 sentences for me and get it in LinkedIn ready essentially? So very basic use case, but starting with something like instead of just saying check out this job, you can actually put the link to the job into AI and say, can you summarize this and create a LinkedIn post for me? Very simple use case, but really impactful and useful. So that's one place I would say is thinking about any kind of job, kind of advertising, recruitment marketing, campaigns. The second piece I would say is thinking about creating a bit of you would call them different things, but sell sheets or flyers or key points for your sourcers or recruiters to help them in a one succinct page. Why would a candidate in this particular area or job family join the organization? And instead of them having to sit there and think about it every time, or maybe they're new and they haven't yet learned the organization, having a little sell sheet that's been created by AI that's taken all your organizational information and taking that job and said, here's the one page to help guide that conversation with the candidate. If you're a recruiter or sourcer joining us here live, you could do that yourself. You don't have to wait for someone else to do that for you.
Right.
Um, that's another one. I talked a little bit about it, but even just listing out what are the top 10 text messages or emails you send to candidates that aren't already templatized, and you have the opportunity to either refine them, tailor them, personalize them. I'm not saying going against whatever your overall company framework is for mandated content, but use AI to help you with those top 10 messages that you send out. What do you say to candidates that you're re-engaging or rediscovering? That's quite common in frontline to go back and rediscover people that may be now available or want to pick up a second or third job. So that would be the other use case. And then probably the third, and it's quite linked to the others, but for more passive candidates, helping you write what are the advantages that would be for joining the organization in comparison to their current role. So you might know that they're at company A and you're trying to get them to join your organization at company B using AI to say, person's currently here, we're trying to attract them here. Can you give me 3 or 4 bullets on why they might want to change? And instead of you having to sort of go and spend an hour doing research and figuring that out, you actually can get AI to help you with what are the key advantages of your organization and prompt some ideas.
So I love that. I love that very much. You may have seen before my empathy map that I
Mhm.
use to help inform an organization about who they're trying to attract, right? So,
Yep.
what's the persona of the person you're talking to with that messaging? And I'm now starting to use Claude and ChatGPT
Hmm.
to help me build empathy maps.
That's great.
So, right, you put in the data that you know about a candidate. So, we're looking for a 27-year-old Latina STEM
Hmm.
grad from a state school, right?
Hmm.
And what can we assume about that person? And this is a consumer exercise, right? This is how
Yep.
marketers determine who they're going to advertise to and what to say. But you're not using this to exclude anyone, or it's meant to be more inclusive of the type of people that you'd really like to have in your
Hmm.
organization. But what it really does is help you say, all right, well, this person has these concerns and issues in their life. And what is it about our organization that really sings to that, you know,
Yeah.
addressing their needs? And um, I believe firmly that this is a an example of using AI for
Mhm.
good and humanizing your message a little more.
It
Uh,
is, yeah.
yeah.
And I
Um,
think if you think about those empathy maps historically before AI, you may have to spend an hour or something kind of researching, putting together, using a research analyst or an insights person.
mhm.
Now, in the matter of prompt the right way, and in 3 minutes, you probably have at least a starting point to give you ideas and then further refine.
We've got choices in our GPTs now, right? So you've
Hmm.
got the standard model, and you have reasoning models, and you have
Yep.
coding models. And I think I've found the reasoning models are really good for this.
Hmm.
So if you've
That's a
got
really
that
good point.
capability, that that's a kind of a complex problem to say, go out
Yeah.
and research and find X, Y, and Z about
Hmm.
these types of people. All right, so there's a lot of hype around AI. Um, what's realistic? What kind of tangible outcomes can we expect to be able to document when you take an incremental approach to onboarding AI in your process?
Yeah, I think thinking about first, what are the use cases that you're going to be using AI for? Because I think, in order to get to the outcomes or in order to determine what outcomes you want to drive, you first need to understand where in the process you're going to use it, how are you going to use it, how much change your organization is ready for. What we are seeing is, when we're thinking about efficiencies in specific areas of the process. So if I just take like one step in the recruitment process and apply an AI use case, generally we're seeing kind of a 20 to 35% reduction in effort needed. So time that a recruiter spends or time that a coordinator spends in a single step. Now, obviously that varies significantly depending on what step in the process and what your current state is. But efficiencies, I would say, are probably the first piece that we're seeing for an outcomes perspective of just time savings for a role within TA. The next, I would say, kind of outcome, or most commonly seeing is speed. So you'll see a lot of really compelling stories of restaurants, gas stations, big box retailers, logistics companies, because they have the volume of hiring running through it. But you'll see, um, timing that maybe previously were weeks to hire are now being done in minutes to hire, even to the point that some candidates are like, wow, is this actually even a real process? Um, this has gone so fast. And those are realistic and tangible outcomes, and they, have been measured, but those aren't for everyone and they aren't for every organization. Not all organizations are ready for that. And even my colleagues and I've been having a number of conversations with clients where they don't aspire to get to I hired someone in 18 minutes or in 25 minutes because their differentiator is still I'm going to speak to that person, and at some point in the process I'm still going to keep it human.
Mhm.
And so some organizations aren't ready for that, but there are tangible outcomes and lots of stories that you'll see on LinkedIn and other places of these high volume frontline hiring organizations that are getting to I've got an offer in less than a half an hour. I'm starting in less than 2 days, which is great, but that may not be the outcome that every organization is trying to get to or the experience they want to drive for the candidates.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point because there are some organizations that are, for better or for worse, stubbornly sticking to their sort of more drawn out process.
Yeah.
I talked to an organization the other day, and they said, um, we only hire unicorns. So every situation is different. And I said, well, no, actually, unicorns all have a lot in common, and you can document that very easily. And so this is a pretty straightforward process. What you're saying is you want to take more time and hire creative people who are also good project managers. And they're like, oh, uh-huh.
Oh.
So yeah, never heard that one before.
Hmm.
But you can put all the company information, not proprietary stuff, but
Hmm.
training manuals and the company kind of content guide and voice of customer documents and all these things into a custom GPT that then really informs the way, I mean, even videos of your CEO speaking at a conference or online to capture the voice of, how you should be messaging these candidates and how to onboard them to make them feel really welcome and entrenched. And, even those companies that are, not looking for an 18-minute offer can benefit from, utilizing these tools. They're really just good at summarizing data, right? And if you can cut through the nonsense, the disconnects, then ChatGPT even has a model now that will do follow-ups. So you could set a whole onboarding process to remind managers to check in with new hires very easily now with a ChatGPT, which is I think
And
it's
that's,
remarkable.
I mean, even just like that one component of the process, then you might be taking that from an efficiency perspective. That efficiency might be either you weren't doing it at all before, so therefore you had other consequences of either dropout or someone not feeling warm and welcome or not feeling like they were ready for their first day or taking a couple more days to learn who's who or learn the manager when they could have actually done that ahead of time. So maybe it wasn't being done ahead, but there were other consequences. Or if it was being done and it was being done by a person manually sending that, then your efficiency gain there is actually probably 90 to 100% that you're actually not doing that at all, or you're only maybe needing to engage when there's a follow-up question or something like that. So I think, that's a really great example of another one place to start is picking that, maybe just that one step in the
Yeah.
onboarding process and setting some of those follow-ups.
Yeah. AI doesn't take vacations or
hmm
paternity leave,
Yeah.
right?
Or forget on your little checklist that maybe you wrote down, oh, I need to, reach out to Craig because he's starting next week. And oh,
That's
I
right.
never got to that.
Yeah.
Well, if you already have that in place, you don't even need to write it down on your checklist.
So we touched on this earlier. Um, how do we avoid the risk of bias in the process when we're starting to look at these options?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different things. I think one, it's doing due diligence at the start. So it's whether it's bringing in a third party services. I know Andre, you mentioned SoundHound, bringing in something, an organization like that, or an organization like we have responsible AI programs that are third party to help conduct an assessment before you actually deploy those AI use cases. So whether that's using a third party, whether that's using an internal team, if you have the luxury of that, and assessing what are you going to be using the use case for, how's the process going to work, doing a bit of that due diligence up front. And then also ensuring that what's your ongoing mechanism for doing points in time checks or analyses. So we're going to do an adverse impact analysis every month or every 3 months, or maybe I normally do them once a year or twice a year, and I'm going to increase that for a while to make sure that something hasn't, gone awry when I deployed this.
Things
But I
break.
was, yes. So doing a check of what you've put forward, not just at the upfront piece, but ongoing basis. And that will also make, your compliance, your IT teams, your legal teams happy too, that you're upfront thinking about that. So making sure that you have like an ongoing process. That's where the roles kind of changing a bit in TA, that you might actually have someone that's doing some of that check for bias, that's doing some of the validation that you maybe didn't do as often before. But I'd say upfront due diligence as well as an ongoing mechanism for checking what you've done.
Yeah, I like that very much. Um, so you know, I think having that foresight is one of the things that can inform hiring managers and recruiters about um, improving the candidate experience or the new hire experience versus just creating a more impersonal process,
Mhm.
right? If you experience it, if you think it through, if you understand what the risks are, that's one of them is just making it too automated.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
have you seen examples of employers doing that well?
That have kind of automated it too much or that have done like the checks throughout.
Either both.
Yeah. I mean, I've certainly seen where companies have almost gone too far and they've done it really well, where they've thought through a workflow, they've built out their tools, they've built out every single step in the process. If the candidate has these, 4 or 5 components, then send this text. If they have these 3 things, then send this email. If
Hmm.
and then they've really spent all this time developing a personalized workflow, which is, great. But then they find we only have one touch point with a person, or we forgot to think about, how that made an individual feel because they're making a big decision and a life choice. And we actually didn't have a touch point with them before they got that offer or before they got, started.
Hmm.
And then in, those examples, it's almost you still can leave in the automation that's been built and manage those personalized workflows, but you also need a mechanism to constantly evaluate how your workflows have been built and are they working? Are you getting the right open rates of emails? Are you getting the right text messages, responses in a timely fashion that those are being effective? Are people actually watching the videos that maybe you've built into those workflows? And so the great organization or the organizations that do really well are monitoring all those data points
Hmm.
along every component of that automation that they've done and making adjustments in sort of could be a weekly basis or could be a monthly basis, but they're making a very often versus "Oh, I'm doing an optimization project because we haven't touched my ATS in 2 years."
Hmm.
So the good organizations, would say, are doing that on a much more iterative and frequent kind of sprint basis.
Right. I look at all of these tech products that do this automation and workflow, and
Yeah.
um, the good ones have a way for a recruiter or a manager to jump into the process and touch with the
Mhm.
candidate. And one of our other sponsors for TalentNet Live, the Connect platform, is really good about that. You can jump in and create a video personal to that candidate and say,
Yeah.
"Hey, Annie, this is great. Could you tell me about this and that?" And they start to feel like they know you better. So with the automation,
Mhm.
then that human intervention is well received,
Yeah.
in the best scenarios.
I think some of my colleagues always used to take it from them a couple of years ago, but like the off ramps in the process where you're going down a highway and you're still going to maybe you're getting off the highway to get a drink or get a coffee or something, that human can jump in as you get off the off ramp and help, but then you're getting back on and you're still kind of going through that automated experience. But having that ability to jump in, it's actually surprising how many of the tech companies don't have that capability built in
That's
from a
right.
feature functionality, and it's sort of like, well, no, our workflow's been built and you can't really jump in or stop the process or pause the process
Yeah.
when you need to be able to.
Yeah, that's too much, right?
Mhm.
So do you remember the OnStar system in
Yes.
what was it, GMC cars,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Or Ford, I can't remember,
I
but
can't.
it was
Yeah.
GMC, I think. And but a real person would jump through your speakers and start talking to
Mhm.
you, and it was alarming but awesome.
Yeah. Until you got used to that.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. So um, as AI continues to evolve, what's one trend or development you're seeing in AI-driven hiring that's exciting?
Yeah, it's probably quite basic, but it's interesting how many times I'm talking to organizations that they still have swivel chair activities going on. They still have spreadsheets being run. And
Hmm.
so while I know it doesn't sound that maybe compelling, but those things going away and not being reliant on I've done something over here, now I'm doing it over in this system, or I'm manually typing up this summary of screening notes, for example, taking away those types of tasks as administrative tasks being lessened, I think is most exciting. And it might be, on some hand, might be boring to some, but I think it's exciting because not having a recruiters working in offline files, summarizing information in an email, etc. Um, I think that's great from a engagement perspectives of those individuals, from a career development point of view, from a candidate perspective, that they're going to hopefully get answers faster because the recruiter doesn't have to spend a day taking their Word document and summarizing it and putting it in email, etc. So it's quite boring to some degree, but that to me is really exciting because I think that just overall improves the experience for everyone involved in hiring.
Yeah. Removing non-recruiting activities
Yeah,
from a recruiter's plate.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, spreadsheets are still fine, of course, right?
yeah,
But I mean, gosh, you can put a spreadsheet into Chat GPT now and have it
yeah.
interpret all the data and build out the next
hmm
page for you. I mean,
Yeah,
it's one of the greatest things ever.
yeah.
So, I mean that's one of the things that because I'm a data guy, right? And so
hmm
I have multiple data points that I'm constantly tracking for organizations, and the analysis you can do with these tools is just phenomenal. And if you already are good at spotting trends in data, then it's even better.
hmm
If you had to make a bold prediction, what will AI hiring look like in the next 5 years?
Oh, 5 years out, that's a big one too.
Right.
So I think there's probably two things I would think about here. I mean, I would say first we will see more kind of virtual AI recruitment type of capabilities. So we call them AI recruiters, agentic recruiters, however you want to class it, handling more transactional conversations and having that availability of 24/7, but using hyper personalized experience in doing so. So they're getting an individual experience, but it might be more that the virtual AI recruiter is handling some basic screening kind of activities. So I think that's one piece. At the same time, I do think we will see humans being more engaged to coach candidates and focusing on, I mentioned earlier, but kind of coming back to what we saw 10 years ago around candidates as consumers and allowing recruiters to focus more on conversations about, you, if I'm a recruiter talking to you as a candidate, Craig, like more, what's your personal motivation? Why are you excited about the opportunity? Though having those types of conversations, but I think the kind of AI component of that means that more virtual or agentic agents will be involved in recruitment.
Yeah.
So I think that's one piece. And then I think the other piece, and I'm going to steal this from my esteemed colleague, Jonathan Kestenbaum, we always talk about predictions and things like that. And he talks a lot about the outcomes-based approach and technology. I think service providers are there, but tech companies are not yet signing up for outcomes-based approaches. And I do think there will be, with AI, more push for companies buying tech that are aligned to outcomes versus just a subscription.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. I think the yes, the pricing models will change, the buying
Mm,
models will change. The what are the data points that you care about now? What are the KPIs? Right? Is it maybe more of the right candidates, which means
mm,
more of the people that you're sourcing are getting interviews
yeah.
versus we just got 10,000 people to apply.
hmm
And we'll be able to really dial that in. And of course, AI will be listening to every conversation
hmm
and analyzing every interaction to, say, all right, we're doing this well, we're not doing that well.
hmm
And, these are the exact types of people that get in here and stay. Because in 5 years, we'll have that data,
Yeah.
right?
Versus right now, we're pulling some reports. Someone's manually maybe comparing some of, making assumptions and comparing data points. You might be just relying on ATS data only. You're not maybe thinking about your survey data, your lifecycle listening data, or your programmatic advertising data might be sitting in another tool, but being able to connect all those pieces together and using AI, not that you have to go buy a different platform necessarily, but more so you can layer AI on top to basically discern and kind of assess and surface those data points.
Yeah, exactly right. All right. So, is there uh, is there a place on the AMS website where people can go to learn about AMS's approach to AI?
Yeah, you can certainly start with a website. I'm sure my marketing team would be really happy for me to
To
for me
have
to
that?
say that. Start at the website. We do have a number of pieces of content, whether it's thought leadership or whether it's just about our approach in general or service offerings. We also have AMS Verified, which has a number of the technology companies in the talent acquisition space, catalog solutions associated with them, case studies, etc. So between our main website and AMS Verified, you can sign up for free for that. If you do want a more personal conversation, you're happy to reach out to me. As you can tell, I kind of love to nerd out on this type of stuff. So always happy to have a chat with anyone as well. But you can go to the AMS website or AMS Verified.
All right. And if you want to visit with Annie and I in person, and Andre and several other esteemed roustabouts in the talent space, you can meet us in Austin on March 7th. You can get information about that at talenttexas.com. It's a great URL. It's
It
really
is a
good.
great, yeah, good job on securing that.
Thank you. Thank you. It's one of my superpowers.
Getting great domains.
Getting great domains. That's right. All right, Annie, this is enlightening and inspiring as always. And thank you for being with us today. And we will, I'm sure, do this again at some point later in the year
Yeah.
and do more AI talk.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing many of you in Austin next week.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.